Good evening and welcome to Munich Public Library. My name is Judith. I'm heading the program department of the Munich Public Library, and I'm happy to welcome you here in Munich. Tonight's event is titled Physik für die Katz, Physics for the Cat, and will be hosted by Lisa Frühbeis and Tom Gauld. A warm welcome to both of you. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for coming all the way from London, Tom.
Thank you.
This evening is part of a series of events that's called Comic Bar, and comics have long since become staples of library collection and are hugely popular among readers of all ages. What makes this series very special is that it is curated by 3 people who are comic artists themselves, and 2 of them are here today, Domi Wendland and Lisa Frühbeis. And as they are comic artists themselves, they can give really nice and special insights into the graphic works. Before we turn to tonight's guests, I'd like to mention that Lisa's work explores themes such as body image, the conflicting emotions of motherhood, and feminist issues. Her work has won numerous awards. Just a few days ago, the documentary comic Schattenleben, Shadow Life was released by Reproduct. It focuses on people living in Germany without a residence permit. I'm really looking forward to checking it out. Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
Dear Lisa, dear Tom, thank you again for being here. I'll hand the stage over to you. We look forward to insights into the subtle and very diverse work of Tom Gauld. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you for the welcome. I didn't expect this. It's not about my book, it's about Tom Gauld. Tom Gauld was born in 1976 in Scotland, on the countryside.
That's right, yes, near Aberdeen.
Near Aberdeen. Now lives in London and graduated from the Royal College of Art. Went on to create comics, illustration, cartoons.
All of them, yes.
Yes. For The New Yorker, The New York Times, The Guardian, and The New Scientist. His books, among others, are Goliath, Mooncop, Revenge of the Librarians, and Physics for Cats, which in German has the genius translation, Physik für die Katz. We are in a library right now. What is your relationship to libraries?
I mean, it's always been a good relationship. My parents were huge library fans, and all my first reading was library books. But since I published a book with the title Revenge of the Librarians, I've met more librarians than the whole rest of my life put together. Every different type of librarian as I've toured the world with that book, and it's been delightful.
And cats?
Well, yeah, we were I don't know if you think this in Germany, but often in Britain you talk about cat households and dog households. We were very much a cat household. We never had a dog. We always had cats when I was a child. I've got nothing against dogs. Please buy the book, even if you love dogs. But that's when I was a child, and now I have children. And my younger daughter, Iris, wanted a cat. So we got a cat just after the pandemic. So however, 1 million years or 3 years or whatever it was ago, we got a cat. And there's definitely more cats have appeared in my comics since I have a cat pawing me in the morning who wants to be fed.
And now you made a book about it.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to read a short excerpt, and then we start deep into talking about it, so we know what we will be talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to read a little opening piece which isn't from the book, but is connected to the book. And then I have a little diagram which explains the book a little, and then we'll work together to explain things. So this was made, my favorite comic shop in London is called Gosh Comics, and it's a really brilliant comic shop in Soho, so right in the centre of London. And I've gone from being a customer when I first moved to London to selling them my comic books and zines when I was first left college and was self-publishing things, to becoming a friend of the owner, and now whenever I have a new book, I have an event at Gosh. And we often try and think of, when the book's coming out, if there's something extra we can do to mean people won't buy the book on Amazon, they'll buy it from Gosh. So I made this little zine based on, called the Schrödinger Variations. And it's based on Schrödinger's cat, which ties in with the book. I'll just read a quick explanation of what Schrödinger's cat is in case anyone's forgotten. Schrödinger's cat is a famous thought experiment devised by physicist Erwin Schrödinger in 1935. It illustrates the bizarre nature of quantum superposition, the idea that a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously, by imagining a cat in a sealed box whose life or death depends on a random atomic event. So inspired by that, I've come up with my own variations. The box is sealed. The cat is inside. The scientist theorizes that it is simultaneously dead and alive. The box is open. The cat is dead. The scientist feels terrible. The box is open. The scientist is relieved. The cat wants its dinner. The box comes flat pack. The scientist can't find part G. The cat is sitting on it. The box is open. The cat refuses to get in. The scientist is considering using a tortoise instead. The box is sealed. The scientist and the cat have gone to visit the scientist's mother for a few days. The box is full of cat treats. The scientist has a Nobel Prize. The genie asks who wants the third wish. The scientist regrets measuring so hastily. The cat won't fit. The box company does not do refunds. The theory makes the scientist famous. The box is bought by a museum. The cat could not care less. The box opens into a new dimension. The scientist and the cat climb in. The box folds into itself and disappears forever. That's the end of that story. Thank you. So that's the English language cover. And as we were saying, there's a clever pun in the German version, which doesn't exist in English. I just chose Physics for Cats because it sounds like a sort of arresting, weird title. So when the German publisher asked if they could tweak it just a tiny bit to give it this extra pun, I was happy they did that. But it's a complete, just good luck, really. This is a little diagram since we're doing a science book. To explain. This circle represents all the things in the world that are science. And this second circle represents all the things that are cats. And the area where they intersect is scientists studying cats, and since we're in a cartoon world, cats doing science. And this third circle represents the cartoons in the book. So as you can see, they're entirely all about science. And a small portion of them are about both cats and science. So that's the explanation of what's in the book. And these cartoons I make for a magazine in the UK. It's a popular science magazine called New Scientist, which has been going since the since the 1950s and is very popular in the UK. And I've now, for 10 years, been making a weekly cartoon for them. And all the books in the cartoon originally appear in the magazine.
Yeah, you kindly brought some insight on your process with you. How you have another regular comic strip, right?
Yes, yeah. I've for 20 years been making a weekly comic strip for the Guardian newspaper in London on Saturdays, which appears on their book. It used to be called the arts pages, but now it's called the books pages, and it's always mainly been about books.
So how many strips per week?
It's one for The Guardian and one for New Scientist.
2 a week, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a while when I also did a weekly illustration for the New York Times, and I realized 2 a week is doable and actually an enjoyable amount of busyness for me, and 3 is too much.
How much time do you have for one then? 1 week?
Yes, although ideally it's done in a day, or.
Yeah.
I put aside the first half of the week for these strips, and ideally it's Monday and Tuesday, but I've got Wednesday for either of them to spill over into if I haven't come up with a good idea.
Yeah, how much of it is for the cats, meaning for the bin?
Oh, is that yes? Loads. I mean, that's the little space I have on the letters page of the science magazine, and so it's like my little space that I have to fill every week. And they're really the editors are all really nice, and they're very positive, and they almost never ask me to change anything except spelling or tiny little errors. So they very much leave me to do my own thing, and so it's my own standards I feel I'm working to, and for that reason I'm always trying to make sure the next one is good and interesting and different to the last. I don't have recurring characters or even recurring themes. Each one is its own little fresh start, and I never want 2 in a row to feel repetitive. So thinking of the ideas is the tricky part, and for that reason, it's all the creative bit is about my sketchbooks. I have a little sketchbook. I'll show you the real thing. It's about the size of the little red one is about the size of well, that's my actual passport, but that's it's the same size as my passport, which I carry in my pocket all the time, and I almost have a rule that if I have an idea, I write it down or I draw it down in there, even if it's a bad idea or it's half of an idea or 10% of an idea. I just fill these notebooks with ideas. The black book I carry around in my rucksack. So if I have time to spread out and work in it, I do. And I just fill the pages with ideas. And as you say, most of them are not going to be used. But I kind of think of these sketchbooks as a sort of compost of ideas out of which maybe an idea will grow. Hopefully the idea will grow. But if it doesn't, it's just there. And maybe in 2 years' time, I look back at those ideas and figure out something that works.
Do you do that? Do you go flip through your sketchbooks?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, because, some weeks I just don't. It's Monday morning and I don't feel hugely inspired. On an ideal say the Monday is when I tend to do my Guardian comic strip, and in the sort of platonic ideal of a perfect cartooning day, I walk to the studio, I buy a coffee on the way, and something about the walking and the caffeine and the thinking. Often by the time I get to the studio, I have a feeling of something that might work. But the best days I have an idea, and then I sort of know the difficult bit's done. That spark is the difficult bit. And I know the rest of the day I can spend the morning working on it, in the afternoon neatening it up, and it'll be a nice day's work. And then there's other days when it gets to 5 p.m. on Monday and I've got filled up 3 pages of my sketchbook and none of it quite works. So... But that's the job. And the good thing about having a weekly deadline is you can't be a complete perfectionist. If I haven't had a good idea after a day and a half's work, I always think I have to take my least bad idea and polish it up as well as I can and turn it into a cartoon. And actually, I don't know if you find this, but you as the artist making the thing at the moment are not the best judge of whether it's good or not. And my general thing is just to keep going and hope it is good. And sometimes I have a feeling, oh, this is actually going really well. Other times I'm not really sure, but I just push on and finish it because I know my editor would rather have a weird misfire of a cartoon than an empty space. So it's good to combat perfectionism.
Are you a perfectionist?
A type of perfectionism kind of comes over me when I don't have a deadline. And that's why I'm so slow at making the longer books. So this is a good way of, also the smallness of them means you can be a kind of perfectionist in a way with something that's so small. And so that's like a little page of doodles in my little notebook. Actually, the prettiest pages, I've probably chosen quite a pretty one there to show you, are the ones where the ideas aren't working. When the ideas start coming together, I probably speed up a bit and things get a bit scrappier. Whereas when I'm sort of slightly stuck and just kind of almost moving my hand in a sort of meditative way, I end up with quite neat little drawings. And then there's quite ugly pages when things have started coming together. And so I end up with a big pile of sketchbooks in my studio, and occasionally if I have nothing to do, I flick through them and make some notes of, oh, this is an idea I didn't use, or this was an alternative idea 5 years ago which I had to choose between the two, and now it's long enough I can take the other one and maybe work with that a little.
Walk us through how a strip usually comes to life from blank paper to final result. We already know the doodling, but what happens then?
Yeah, the doodling is for me almost all the work. I don't really leave working in the notebook until I really feel I know what I'm doing. At that point, I'm kind of relieved. I'm either relieved or resigned to my fate. And then I move on to just cheap photocopy paper, where I work with a pencil drawing. And often I do a really bad drawing, and then I put it on a light box which shines light through the drawing, and trace it again in pencil and get a slightly less bad drawing. And usually after about 10 tracings and maybe scanning it into the computer and moving things around, I end up with a pencil or a mixture of pencil and printed out image, which is exactly the format that I want to finish with, that has kind of taken the idea in the sketchbook and poured it into the right shape to be in the magazine. And apart from when I have to move things around or I draw something a bit too small and need to make it bigger, I try and stay away from the computer as much as I can when I'm thinking and when I'm playing, just because I feel like once the artwork is inside the computer with that glass keeping me away from it, it's sort of finished in a way. It's asking to be neatened up and sent off to the printer or the publisher. Whereas in the sketchbook, it's kind of more playful. So I try and keep it out of the computer until I've made a nice ink drawing. So I use the light box so I can trace off in these nice Japanese ball pens that I really like. And I get a finished artwork, which is completely finished except for the color. And then I scan that into the computer and I do the final coloring on the computer. I'd love to make lovely watercolor or gouache finished artworks, but I'm quite colorblind. I've got red-green color blindness issues, so I can only really color by playing and trying lots of different things and using the mathematics of the computer to check if I've colored someone's face green or pink or brown. It's I don't think I'm ever going to become a great watercolorist. So I use the computer for that.
Oh,
element.
because the watercolor box doesn't give you feedback.
Well, also you can't just keep going until it looks right. So there's a lot of experimenting with colors, and sometimes I don't even really know what the colors are, but I just think it looks nice. So if it's not a realistic image, that's fine. And then I email that to them once I've colored it.
Then they say, fine.
Well, sometimes they say the nice thing about working for weekly magazines is everybody's so busy that really they just leave you alone. If you're hitting your deadlines, handing stuff in on time, being polite to everyone, that's how I've stayed there at the Guardian for 20 years. Is not being difficult, and when they do occasionally ask for changes, I'm always very polite about making some of their changes, not necessarily all of them. So why did I start saying that? You asked
because
a question
I said
and I got
what they said.
Oh yeah, and so sometimes they'll say that is brilliant.
Ooh.
And sometimes they'll just say thanks. And I don't know. I've learned not to take that as
a reference.
A reference. I think it just depends how busy somebody is and what mood they're in and stuff. So I don't read anything into that.
And it's different people accepting.
It's different people accepting, and I know they're all very busy. And sometimes they don't reply at all, and it appears in the paper. So that is because in both cases, I guess I'm working on people who are doing lots of other things there.
And you really do the drawing 10 times. It was not an exaggeration.
Yeah, I mean, it could easily be that. I start off because I suppose I have this quite pared down minimalist style. I want all that stuff to be right. So yes, there is a lot of reworking it. So things have just changed a tiny little bit.
Wow. Sorry, you answered so much of my questions.
Oh, sorry.
Completely fine.
Okay, let's go. Oh no, I'm going forward.
No, backwards.
Sorry, I thought I could tap it and go back, but I can't.
Droop.
All right, well done, stay
Where?
calm. Yeah, let's
Here?
just leave it there while you...
Good one.
Oh.
Was that me? How to be smart and funny under time pressure? I mean, the way that you're describing it is you're walking to the bakery to get your coffee, and then you have this cool and funny idea.
What is it? I mean, if that hasn't worked, then I sit at my desk and work, and I sort of spend the whole day going back and forth between my desk, or I go out for a walk, I go for another coffee, and I basically drink coffee until I have an idea or I feel sick. So that's part of it, and I've got some sort of mental methods of coming up with ideas. With The Guardian, let's take that for an example. There's certain times of year I have to do certain cartoons. There's a big book festival called the Hay Festival in Britain, so I know I always need to do a cartoon around that time. So if the theme is book festivals, I sort of have different ways I'll think about them. Like one of the things is like, what is the opposite of a book festival? Which there isn't an opposite, but it might be. I did a cartoon a couple of weeks ago about a town which always had a book festival, and then one weekend of the year it stops having a book festival. So that's the sort of opposite. Or I think, what's the earliest version of, like Caveman Book Festival about something? Or what is the most extreme version of it? So I have these sort of tricks and lenses where which I use. And if I really like something, like I did a cartoon about, I wanted to do a cartoon about children reading and the fact that we're worried they're not reading enough now. But I don't like to make preachy cartoons like that. So I try and think of, well, why would you not want your child to read? So it's often thinking, what is the opposite of what people expect? So those little tricks kind of help me and maybe just start me on a journey which ends up somewhere completely else.
Contrast maximation, maybe.
Yes. And, using what people do expect or do know about scientists or crime novels or whatever, and using that and then doing unexpected things with it as well.
When are you happy? When are you feeling your comic strip is successful?
That's a nice a nice question. There's a peak of happiness when I realise I've come up with an idea which is going to work. It's a mixture of happiness and relief, and why the peak is early is it's because humour is often about surprise, and when you at that peak, I'm still slightly surprised by the idea. It's new to me, and then I spend the rest of the day fine-tuning it and thinking, is it funnier if there's a pause here, or is it funnier if I use this word instead of that word? And it becomes quite scientific, really, after perhaps this sort of artistic peak. And there's a point where you forget that feeling of it being funny. It doesn't seem funny anymore because I've just thought about it all day long. And I often have to remind myself towards the end of the day, no, this definitely felt funny 4 hours ago. So hopefully for somebody new, it'll be funny. And I never ask anyone what they think of the cartoons anymore. I just send them. I ask the editor is the first person to see them apart from me, because I think if you ask someone, if you say, is this funny, then it's very difficult for them to actually have the normal emotion of finding something funny. They clam up and they panic. And my wife, when I used to do it, would be like, I think probably people would find that funny. But that's not really what I want to hear. I want her to sort of laugh her head off, which she's not going to do when I pounce on her with a cartoon. So I've just given up on doing that and just trust that I found it funny earlier, and hopefully other people will. And I suppose the other time that's nice is when it actually gets published and either people email me or like it online, and that kind. Again, it's a mixture of pleasure and relief that it works.
Then it's success.
Yes, yeah, that feels like success. Yes.
Are you afraid you will be out of jokes someday?
I do think I may not want to do cartoons about books or science forever. I do the weekly cartoon about books because it was the books editor of The Guardian who 20 years ago said to me, would you like to do a books cartoon with us? If the motoring correspondent had said, would you like a cartoon about cars, I'd have been happy to do it. But I don't think I'd still be doing a cars comic strip 20 years later, because I think books do kind of, they are something I'm interested in, something I love. So it's definitely a passion of mine. But I think the fact that the reason I've done 1,000 books cartoons is because that's the job. And I do think, maybe someday I know I'll have a week when I can't think of anything, and then maybe I bumble through that week and the next week if it's still stuck. I think at that point I'd have to stop and do something else.
Are you also passionate about physics, or?
I'm passionate about science, yeah. I have no education in science. I stopped studying sciences in school when I was sort of 16. As soon as I could, I did. But I was always a fan of science and scientists. My grandfather was a scientist, and he read New Scientist magazine, and when he'd finished reading it, he'd give it to my dad, and my dad would read it and have it around the house. So I've looked at that magazine since I was small. And both my aunt and my uncle on my dad's side are, they're an engineer and a scientist. So they're a very sciencey family, that lot. And when I started my cartoon for New Scientist, they were much more impressed than when I worked for the New Yorker or the Guardian, because that was going to say, that was what they understood. They must be so proud of you. It was lovely, and they were interested and proud in a way that they'd always been interested and proud. But I could tell it was it came more naturally there. So I'm a fan, and I want to make cartoons about science that are teasing but have love in them, and with books as well. I kind of think the cartoons are a little bit like when your friends tease you. You know they're not being cruel. They may be being cruel, but in a way which they know you can take. And I hope that my cartoons come across like that about everything I do, but particularly the books and science ones.
So that's also a form of your success if you achieve that.
Yes. Yeah, and I worried when I was first hired for The Guardian that the readers of that magazine know more about science than me, and the writers and the editors certainly do. And there are some readers who are very eminent scientists, generally not reading it to find out about their own field, which they'll read some peer-reviewed journal, but to know about science generally. So I was worried that the letters page would have people just saying, "What is this nonsense?" So it's been lovely that they've been appreciated, and that I get emails from scientists saying, "Can I use your cartoon in my presentation or even the front page of someone's PhD?"
Wow.
So that was very nice.
Cool. How is science present in your not work life? What are the mind rooms that you walk around in?
Well, I mean, it's part of my love of science is my whole life of science fiction. So I love science fiction movies and books, and I read a lot of that. And often they are adjacent to real scientific concepts, and then I end up reading about those. And I was doing a bit of that anyway, but when I got the job to do the weekly cartoon for New Scientist, well, what was actually happening was I was doing illustrations for the magazine. When I'm not making cartoons, I often illustrate other people's articles or things. And New Scientist magazine for years has been very good at using illustrators, partly because there isn't a photo for the quantum world or all these other things. So they use a lot of illustration. And I was making illustrations for them, and I always enjoyed working for them. And the art director, we became quite friendly. And then one day I'd published a little zine of my own comics, and I sent him a copy and wrote a postcard. And I think I was just going to write, "Hope you enjoy this, Craig." But for some reason I said, "And if you ever want a weekly cartoon about science, let me know." I thought, well, if they wanted one, they'd have asked, or we'd have talked about it. And anyway, the next day he emailed back and said, "We'd love a weekly cartoon about science."
Fantastic.
I don't know why we didn't have one before. We did talk about it once, but we thought you'd be too busy. So there's a lesson there in knowing to ask for things, even if you assume other people haven't thought of it.
A lot of assumptions, yeah.
Yes, we were all making assumptions, and it did seem mad that they didn't, because I think cartoons and science do have that connection. Gary Larson's Far Side cartoons often featured scientists, and I think he has about, a species of ant named after him, and there's a sort of tradition of college professors having cartoons pinned on the door of their office. So there's always been that connection.
Or drawing scientists, XKCD.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So anyway, it was all a bit of a shock, and I suddenly had this weekly. What they actually did was they said, "Can you do 12? We'll pay you for them, and then we'll show the editor, just so he can see that you can do it regularly." And he was happy. I was happy, and I realized about then, this can work. Even though I know less about science than I do about publishing and books, actually that's part of the fun. Is learning things and hunting for inspiration.
Where do you hunt? YouTube, books?
Yeah, I've followed a bunch of scientists on Twitter at the time, and now on Blue Sky and on Instagram. And I started listening to some science podcasts and reading more science books, and never or rarely to research anything. It's more just to hunt out little weird turns of phrase or concepts or little aspects of the science life that I can think, oh yeah, that'll make a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And
so not the theory itself, but the odd corners of
Yes,
science life.
exactly. Or the way somebody presents the theory, it might be, or the glossary at the end of the end of a thing is what. So it's often an unexpected thing, and you sort of can't plan how to find inspiration. You just kind of need to wander and be open to it when it comes. And I don't try and ever. Well, no, I try and get the science either completely right or so wrong that nobody thinks it's supposed to be right. And probably the so wrong thing is more often. But I do like the little details to be right. And that's the good thing about having a magazine like that who I can ask, is they can check my formulas are not incorrect. If there's something I'm not sure about, then I do, yes.
And they answer.
Yes. Well, also that's the good thing about, probably if I wrote to a college professor, they'd reply 3 months later. But these are deadline weekly magazine people, so they're quite good at answering things quickly.
Shall we talk about tools? You're structure and hatching is Strukturen.
Yes.
Enthusiast, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
What tools do you need to make good structures? What are your best pens? Japanese ball pens you already mentioned.
Yes. Well, when I was at art school in Edinburgh, I discovered the work of Edward Gorey, who's an American. He's not quite a cartoonist, sort of illustrator, storyteller. He's just an absolute genius, and I absolutely loved his work. And it was a real moment of realization. Oh, I can make picture stories which use whatever tools of comics I want to use, but I don't need to follow every part of the classic comics language. I can pick and choose. I can make different things, and that's what he was doing, and that sort of freed me from feeling I had to make comics. I could just make picture stories, and somehow that was an easier way into it from me. And actually, over time, I think I've probably come back to a more traditional idea of comics. But one of the things, apart from his brilliant ideas and his brilliant humor, was he had a lovely style of cross-hatching, which I absolutely copied for all through my art school years. I was basically learning to copy it. And I still work in that style, although I've kind of changed things and figured out my own version of it now. But he worked with a dip pen, but I found that the Japanese Mitsubishi company's Uniball pen is just brilliant. It's you could probably get it in most stationery shops, and it's just a very fine ball pen with a very nice black ink.
Always in your pocket.
It's always in my pocket, yeah. Although when you take them on aeroplanes, they can sometimes go a bit funny, and then you come off the airplane and it sprays everywhere. It doesn't spray, it just sort of blobs. But the ink is amazing. I've had a drawing I did in art school in 2001 on the wall of my studio since then, and I've always put it in the sunniest part of my studio, and it's still never faded.
Wow.
It's still as black as ever. And I like how the line isn't very expressive. It's very even, has a little bit of a wobble because I'm drawing with a human hand on paper, but it's very unexpressive, and I kind of like that, especially for humor. I like the kind of dryness of its line.
Do you know why Japanese pens are so much better than our pens?
I don't.
Because when they write their signs and they write it very small, you still have to read it to differentiate all the small dots and lines.
That makes sense.
So cool. This
Yeah,
is why
no,
the pens are so much better. This is the possibility that we should tell European pen makers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always mentioning the Mitsubishi Pencil Company in the hope that one day they, invite me to Japan and give me a lifetime supply.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened yet.
How fast do you go through them?
I tend to have a bunch of them kicking around, so I don't just have one. So I don't know. It's super nerdy, but basically when you draw with it for a while, your hand warms up the pen, and that means that the lines just get a little thicker sometimes. So I tend to sort of cycle through them in the day, and often I pop them in my pocket. And I I came home from work and felt my pockets felt very full. I realised I had 8 pens in my, all migrated into my pocket.
A day's
day.
work. Yeah.
Yes.
Favorite sketchbook?
Again, it's a Japanese one, actually. This one you can see here is, I can't even remember the name of the company. Shall I have a look?
Sure.
Oh, did I bring it tonight? Maybe I left it in my hotel room. Yeah.
So it won't get lost. Yeah.
Yes.
That's all right.
No, it's a very nice sketchbook, which I used to be able to buy in a shop in London, and they're smaller than A4, but bigger than, I think they're B5.
Yeah, they have B format. Yeah.
Yes, and it's very nice. And then annoyingly, the shop stopped importing them, and I spoke to the owner of the shop, tracked him down, and said to him, "Why aren't you getting these anymore?" And there was some tax import reason. So now I have to use Google Translate and order them through Alibaba or something like that from Japan.
It's my biggest fear that the art shop changes the supplies.
But I bought 25 of them, so I go through one every sort of 6 months, I think.
Okay.
So it's not too.
So for 10, 12 years, you're good.
Yes, and I'm hoping in the next few years to go to Japan, so I'll hopefully be able to pick up another bunch when I'm there. But yes,
Good plan.
it is funny, isn't it? How you get you get used to your tools. The paper I draw the finished cartoons on, the company changed the recipe, and it just did these horrible little. It would soak up a little and make the lines would be a tiny bit furry. I was so annoyed. And then I had about a week of trying out different. I found another one, but it's so, you get so, when so much of your day is spent looking at this very small world you're making on the table, you get slightly obsessed.
It's like it's part of your hand.
Yes.
To me.
Yeah.
The pen is my hand just being longer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Part of your brain, the paper.
Yes.
Yeah. You will read some more of your comic for us. We got really deep into.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And you don't know more than 2 comics.
I'm going to read some comics from the book now. They're all rather they're all very short. This one's called Science Cat, and this was inspired by our cat Luna. Smash. Once again, the experiment confirmed my hypothesis, but further research in this area is required. I love science. And that's the ink drawing you can see at the top, and that's Luna at the bottom. I heard somewhere that black cats are less popular these days. She's a rescue cat, and they said at the rescue place they're less popular because they're not so Instagrammable, because they just turn out as a big black blob with some eyes. So that was rather sad for black cats, but that's why my cat ended up, my science cat ended up like that. So the New Scientist cartoons, sometimes they're based on real science stories, sometimes they're just based on ideas I have. But occasionally, a thing happens in the science world which is so perfect for a cartoon that I have to go with it. And this was a real science story where some scientists built a tiny car and taught a rat how to drive it. And what I like most about this is you can see the scientist literally jumping for joy when it works and the rat starts driving. And I think with something like this, if I didn't make a cartoon about this, they'd probably sack me. So I was happy to make a cartoon, which I'll read to you now. 2019, the rat learns to drive a tiny car. 2021, the rat moves to the suburbs and commutes to the lab. 2023, Rat Car Industries is a huge success. The rat gets a chauffeur. 2025, the rat sells his rat car shares for billions. 2027. Despite all his riches, the rat feels empty and alone. 2029. The rat returns to a simple life in the sewers. And we've got a little bit of film of the rat. Pizza Rat, I think he's called.
Famous.
Famous. It's not the sewers, actually. It's the... He must have come out of the sewers and gone to the subway.
It's maybe where he bought the pizza. And then
He's taking it back to the sewers. Good storytelling. Thank you. Sometimes they're little comic strips. That rat one is a comic strip, and sometimes they're just a single panel like this one. Do you ever worry that we are living in the reflection rather than the reality? Sometimes. I don't know how to say sometimes to make it sound upside down, but I guess that's what the visuals can do. A few of these cartoons are sort of self-referential and kind of about the nature of reality. And that's true of this one as well. The Device. I created this device to test my theory that our entire reality is a simulation. But the readings I'm getting suggest something much worse. What? We're living in a cartoon. Does it at least have a good punchline? Nope.
he even changed your drawing style for this one, for the cartoon. Sorry. Keynote is annoying, right? Cartoony cartoon style.
Yes, I sort of have a few levels of minimalism. There's the completely stickman figure, where I think you can kind of you have to almost completely project everything onto them. And then there's a style I use in my graphic novels, which is kind of more detailed. And then there's this sort of middle one, which I guess is where I need a bit more expression and cartooniness from the characters. So yeah. One of the other things I do to kind of find ideas is look through those slightly cheesy quotes, inspirational quotes, or great quotes by great scientists. And most of them don't really work, but sometimes I find one and think, oh, that would be a fun beginning for a cartoon. And this is one I found from Kierkegaard, which I enjoyed and made a cartoon out of. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And that's the sketchbook page. Once I realized this quote had a kind of nice two directions, then this page of doodles is me figuring out how to interpret that so the comic is doing something more than just the quote. And I love, as a sort of real comics nerd, anything which really plays with the language of comics and makes you read panels in the wrong order or that sort of thing. And the science magazines are a really fun place to do that in. I can be quite sort of infographics and playful with the language of comics in a way that some of the science people probably aren't interested in, but I enjoy that.
Me too. Do you remember the chronologist
of this page?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably. What did I probably went along the top. It's probably diagonally, top to bottom. Although I'm not exactly sure.
You even tried a Möbius comic on the left.
Yes. Yeah, I sort of, or it was back trying to get that backwards and forwards thing, but it kind of didn't quite work. It was once I realized the dog should be in there, I thought, oh, that kind of makes it funny, and also undermines Kierkegaard in a funny way that he's not quite cracked it, but the dog has. So that pleased me. And then the top, when I have details, because I know these cartoons are going to be published on the internet, if there's a date or anything like that, I always have to double check it because people love to correct you on the internet. So getting the details right so they don't distract from the from the cartoon, from the humor, is really important. Because any moment that you spend with your mind not in the right place, the humor is lost. So there's almost a need to be more diagrammatic with a humor comic, I think, because you are really making people laugh by directing their eye around the page in a specific way. And anytime someone's confused, the thrust of the joke is gone.
Good one, yeah.
This one, I have 2 teenage daughters, and this was the inspiration for this. The first iteration of our artificial intelligence system had the brain power of a newborn baby, but it was designed to learn and grow over time. We believe that it's now functioning at the level of a teenager, but we can't be sure as it won't come out of its room. I hate you. This is another sort of infographics-y cartoon. That's one of the nice things about science. There's a real visual language of maps and charts and diagrams, which all my cartoon I think has a bit of that anyway, but it means I can kind of lean into it in quite a nerdy way. So this one is a Venn diagram. Pursued by aliens. Flying object. Hat carried off by the breeze.
I like that you made it blurry.
Oh, well, thank you for noticing that. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that. I didn't, the pencil drawing isn't blurry, and then I just sort of realized, oh yes, that gives it a kind of nice extra X-Files sort of thing. This is another diagrammatic one. This roller coaster uses the golden section to spiral infinitely inwards. I hope it will reveal the universe's deepest secrets to us. Great idea, but how do we get off? An interesting question. And I know a few scientists, and I know that an interesting question is what most of us would say, oh my God, what have I done? I had a scientist friend who built a really interesting little robot drawing arm, and he brought it round to my studio I was helping him test it. I was making drawings, and the robot was copying the drawings. And all day long it just kept going wrong. And he, instead of saying, this fucking machine, I hate it, he just kept saying, that's interesting. And I thought that's the difference between him and me. I'd have had it in the bin after about half an hour.
But this is part of the job, right? To be proven wrong.
Yes, so they say, yes. Although I think that can be overdone. I think
it's not part of our job.
Well, no, exactly. But whenever I've done a cartoon in the past where an experiment goes wrong, there's always some scientist, or probably not a scientist, but someone will say to me online, "There's no such thing as an experiment goes wrong. Just interesting results."
Yeah.
But I think when your laboratory blows up or burns down, that's probably harder to tell yourself that that's an interesting result.
So I'm sensing that you're trying to test them. At which point they would.
Yes, exactly.
Say that
because I think that there's also something in that phrase. There's no such thing as a thing. Is the robotic perfect idea of what science should be, and actually part of the thing in my cartoons is the fact that they're done by flawed, idiotic humans. So that may well be what you ought to believe, but when it goes wrong, you don't necessarily feel like that.
What's the reality?
Yes, yes. Do you ever get the feeling that we're being observed by another life form? Do you ever get the feeling that we are being observed by another life form? Do you ever get the feeling that we are being observed by another life form?
Sorry.
It was kind of an accident, but I realized that I gave both of them one eye, but I think there's something about that ends up looking, you feel more that you're being looked at because it's like a more normal human's two eyes. This one's called The Abyss. I stared into the abyss. The abyss stared back. One thing led to another. And now I meet the abyss for regular chats in the coffee shop near my lab. And there, I guess I'm sort of simultaneously, I think I realized quite early on that the abyss should be very dark and scribbly. And I had the idea, but in the first version they were conversing more. But that's kind of the good thing about having one fixed small space, is it means you have to edit things down and cull even interesting things. I quite like the line, "So have you been in the abyss business long?" But I think I can probably use that for something else someday. And that is the difficult thing sometimes, is I have to lose a line that I like for space purposes. But that, I think that's more than made up for by the fact that the discipline of cutting things down to their simplest form is actually very good, especially for humor cartoons, I think. Sometimes they're just sort of, this is another UFO one, but sometimes it's just a case of thinking of a list or taking a concept and looking at it in multiple ways. Unidentified flying object. Unmanned flying object. Unexpected flying object. Undead flying object. Unsurprising flying object. Unfortunate flying object. In the real cartoon, they don't get squashed by the thing at the end, but I realized in the animation it'd be fun if they did. Cruel but fun. In conclusion, there is no single universal time. Rather, there exist an infinite number of times, each specific to a different place. Therefore, defining any exact, unambiguous point in time is impossible. Peter, I don't know why you can't just say, "Sorry, I'm late," like anyone else. This is a more recent one that isn't in the book, but I quite enjoyed making it. It seemed like there was a load of, I kept seeing tech CEOs wearing polo necks striding around on stages talking about journeys and stories and things like that. So I made my own version. Our journey began with a simple question. Can we create a robot that is enormously powerful, but also completely safe? The answer to that question was no. So I give you DangerBot 900. I had quite a lot of fun designing kind of menacing, but also slightly shonky, probably doesn't quite work properly robot. So, that's the fun thing about sketchbook pages is, if I'd done that on the computer, there'd be no evidence of the sort of various versions of the robot. But I quite like that the story is kept on the sketchbook page. I also spent quite a lot of time trying to come up with a name for my robot company, and I Googled them all, and they kept existing. So My Robo and PeopleBots, I think both of those, or did I do People? Anyway, it turns out if you think of a terrible product name, someone on the internet has probably already got it. So I think this is the last one of the reading, and then we've got some other things to discuss. Please rate your particle collider experience. I've been traveling in airports quite a lot recently, and I keep seeing these little things at the toilets and thinking of this little guy with his cracked head. So yeah, that's the end of the readings. That's the book in English. We've got a different title in German. And my publisher, Megan, took a photo with her cat, Callie. And the first time I put it in this slideshow, I said, oh, it's to give an idea of scale. But actually, I think Callie must be a really enormous cat, because that makes the book look really tiny. So it's not helpful for scale. But yes, it's a cute cat.
And she has her tongue out.
Oh, yes.
Maybe she shot like 20 pictures. And
yes. Well, that's my colour blindness. You see, that pink tongue doesn't stand out very much for me, so I hadn't noticed that. There you go.
It matches well with the book.
Yes.
The book is purple.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I did know that. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks. Do you want to take control now?
Could we get there? Thank you. I wanted to talk with you about another book that you did 15 years ago, so 14 years ago, Goliath.
Yes.
I really like it.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's a bit different. It's a story, like, that goes on many pages.
Yes.
A graphic novel, you could even call it.
Yes.
It's out in German by Reprodukt, and it's republished, but unfortunately I think it appears next month, so can look out for it. I recommend it. It struck me, so it tells the story of Goliath. We know the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me that still I had to cry. I knew what would happen. I was so moved. I think it shows you a bright range of an empathic storyteller.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yes, I hope
Sorry,
so.
it's a spoiler alert if you buy it. But this is a story that we hear as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in school. It's also a study of human psychology, which makes it very contemporary. Why the interest in an Old Testament figure?
Well, I started making comics in art school in 99, 2000, and I thought, yeah, I'll do some short comics and zines, and then I'll do a graphic novel. And then still, sort of 10 years later, I hadn't had an idea that felt right for a graphic novel, and I was really enjoying making shorter zines. I mean, not quite as short as these cartoons, but shorter stories. But I did want to try doing a graphic novel because I love the form, and I was inspired by it. And I also knew it's kind of what the publishers want from you, and is a more practical product than a lot of the weird, eccentric zines I was making. And yet, I couldn't think of an idea. And I did a 4-page comic strip for my friend Sammy Harkham's. He edits an anthology called Kramer's Ergot. I think it's on hiatus now, but he did one issue which was the size of an old newspaper page, and it was referencing those great old American newspaper strips like Little Nemo and Slumberland. So each of the artists got between 1 and 3 pages to tell a big story. And I was thinking what would be a good big story, and then I thought, Noah's Ark would be fun. And I did this. He very kindly gave me a 4th page because I couldn't fit the story into 3. And I really enjoyed drawing. Some of the pages were like 100 panels on the page, and some of them were just one enormous drawing of the ark. And it was Noah's 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, were talking about their dad, and he was saying he was a nutcase, and it was kind of undermining the whole thing, but still sticking with the story. And it sort of ends with them out on the sea realizing that their father was right, and they don't come to much of a realization, but I really enjoyed that. And I sort of realized, I think a little bit like these short cartoons, I liked writing a story which bounced off your expectations of another story. And I tried to think of I was going to do something with a fairy tale, but the kind of madness of fairy tales didn't seem quite the right thing to bounce off then. In fact, I've done later things with fairy tales, but I thought, well, maybe there's another Bible story. And I thought of Goliath. I thought, well, that'll be fun because, in comics, you're always looking at how do you differentiate your characters, especially if you draw very simply like I do. So one of the characters being a giant is kind of great. And so I found a Bible. I was staying with my father-in-law, and he had a Bible in his study. And I looked at the David and Goliath story, and it was just perfect. It's really short, and Goliath is really not in it at all as a character. He's more a series of measurements, how tall he is, how much his armor weighs, how long his staff is. He really is an evil monster with nothing, and he has no lines except the words he shouts saying, "Send someone out to fight me." And so the fact that he's so not in their story, there being the Old Testament authors, I don't remember which book he's in, gave me space to tell my story. And I realized the main thing I do is come up with I had an ending. That's the point. It gave me a really good ending, and an ending is really hard to find for a comic. So actually, knowing I was writing towards that ending, I wanted to write a story where in my version, he is a giant, and that's why everyone sees him as a great warrior, and he ends up slightly through not saying no, he ends up in this terrible situation. And my hope was what you were saying, which I'm always pleased when people find that, is I think you probably never completely forget what the ending of the Goliath story is, but some hopeful human part of us goes, oh, this is nice, this guy seems all right, hopefully it'll work out well for him. Not consciously, but subconsciously. And so I wanted the moment where the Bible story kicks back in and there's a tragic ending to be a real shock.
Yeah, you quote the Bible, the writing is different.
Yes.
And you see how absurd in a way it becomes.
Yes, and I think it's at that moment, hopefully, you realize as soon as the Bible language comes in, he's got no chance.
Yeah.
Because people use David and Goliath as a metaphor where David's the little boy and Goliath is this giant. But once you realize it's a giant against a boy and the all-powerful creator of the universe, then you feel a lot more sympathy for Goliath. So I hope that comes across.
Yeah, you made him a quiet admin worker.
Well, he's
a happy nerd.
Yes.
Yeah. We have so much sympathy for him because he's not left to be. Right?
Yes.
Is this an observation from real life? The happy nerds are not left.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when I wrote this book, I suppose I'm partly thinking, how would I be in that situation? And I don't like confrontation. So I could imagine a situation where but by trying to avoid confrontation, sometimes you end up in more trouble than if you'd just been confrontational. And that's basically what happens to him, is he goes along with it for too long, even though he knows it's not right. So yeah, I was thinking about how I'd be in that situation. And yes, I sometimes think, I just want to sit at my desk and draw comics and be left alone.
Yeah. Hopefully not, but you're not a giant.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not entirely autobiographical.
What happens is the evil captain uses what he thinks would be a frightening giant and sets him up to read this challenging note, right? Yeah,
and the challenging note, the first few lines are done in a font and are exact quotes from the Bible, and his challenge to the Israelites is an exact quote, and the ending text is an exact quote. So I didn't want didn't want it to say, "Oh, it's all a fraud. David was a fraud. It was all cheating, and this is the true story." I think my story doesn't actually negate the Bible story at all. It's just seeing the same thing from another point of view and having, sympathy for poor old Goliath, who, it's a more than 2,000-year-old story. So I think we can have spoilers.
Yeah.
And I loved working on a graphic novel and having more space to have pauses and to have some humor, but also have bits which weren't humorous, and also just taking space to play with having little bits of slapstick in a way that's much harder to fit into a tiny little space. So I really enjoyed doing it, but it was much harder than making weekly comic strips.
You also have Mooncop, which is not out in German, but it's also about a happy nerd. And it has a happy ending.
Yes.
Or is it an unhappy nerd with a happy ending?
Yeah, I mean, they're not that different, those two characters. And I think that is my lack of range. In the short cartoons, I don't really... it's like putting on a little puppet show. I'm not thinking in depth about characters' motivations and feelings. I'm making them do whatever I want to. They live in the machine of the joke. But with both the graphic novels, I guess I'm thinking more, how would I be in this situation? And that's why they're both confrontation averse. And yet they're quite male stereotype characters, the soldier and the policeman. So I guess I'm playing with that a bit.
But Mooncop, so he's a guy who patrols the moon. The moon was colonized. Everyone has left. He's still there. Right?
Yes. Well, it kind of, in my childhood, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 76, as you said. And there was still this slightly leftover feeling that perhaps we would colonize the moon and have holidays there. And it was more slightly out-of-date library books that I was reading, which would say, "Oh yes, by by the year 2000, we'll have a moon base running," and all these things. And yet nothing was happening in those days anywhere near the moon, apart from the ISS, which is very much in the Earth area, atmosphere, orbit exactly. And So I had this idea of trying to make something which is like a slightly melancholy version of all the science fiction stories I loved, and also to try and write a sci-fi story which has all the nerdy, cool space details that I love, but no action or killing or fighting. Yet, the title kind of suggests that there's going to be some cool action. And to avoid giving people that, but without disappointing them. And the other thing, I did want it to have a happy ending, not a kind of ridiculously happy ending, but for the melancholy story to just have a little lip at the bottom.
So what happens is, do you want to tell it?
Sure, yeah. He's patrolling the moon. There's no crime. He fills in his crime report and somehow messes up, and I can't remember actually what. Oh, and they think he's depressed, and they sent him a robot therapist who kind of breaks down. It's all going wrong, but there's a malfunction on a computerized donut machine which he likes to visit. Being a cliched cop, he eats a donut alone in his car, and somehow something goes wrong with that, and that causes the donut company to think people are eating loads of donuts on the moon, and they open a proper drive-through donut stall, which is staffed by a young woman, and it's a sort of romance between them, which has a tiny little bit of a happy ending, or an ending that if you want to believe it's happy, then it can be. So
I believed it.
I
thought it was nice that they like to be happy nerds together on the moon.
Yes.
This is why I mention it, because, Goliath is a happy nerd in the beginning, unhappy in the end, but Mooncop is unhappy nerd, and then he becomes happy in the end. He just likes being almost alone.
Yes.
I liked it.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
And I think both of these stories and many of my comics are this funny mixture that I quite like to draw the same things as I like to draw when I was 8. I quite like drawing spaceships and Noah's Ark and soldiers and things like that. But I feel silly writing a story for adults where these characters are as heroic as I draw them. So I often end up making these stories which play with maybe a slightly childish idea of excitement and masculinity, but then the actual story either just doesn't happen or is a kind of inverse of what you expect.
Like the contrast, like we mentioned in the beginning, when you play your tricks on finding how to find a theme for a cartoon.
Yes,
maybe.
exactly.
Yeah.
And both Goliath and Mooncop, I think when you read the title, you have one expectation, and I'm playing off all the way through the story. Both of them are slightly playing off their expected version.
Like Goliath is no warrior; he's just happy doing admin. In the beginning, he swaps with the patrol guy.
Yes.
Because the patrol guy has admin and Goliath has patrol. So they swap happily.
Yeah, he just wants a quiet life,
Yeah.
sitting at his desk with his stylus.
It's maybe also why I like him, because I want this.
Yeah, no, I think he's probably a cartoonist at heart.
Yeah. You also made 7 or 8 New Yorker covers or more. This is what I counted when I.
Yes.
Googled it.
No, I think I'm at 11 now.
Ooh.
I'd be at 12. I did one recently, but
It's not out yet.
No, whenever the New Yorker obviously is this weekly news thing, and if Donald Trump does something horrible or a New York sports team wins, then you get bumped from the cover. And they keep it in the running, and you probably get it printed again later. My first one got bumped for some news and then had to wait a whole year before it came back. But they've all come back in the end. So I'm at 11 and a half at the moment, I think.
Was the first one the one with the chicken?
The first one was it's a woman reading in a room absolutely stuffed
Full
with
of books. Yeah.
But that was for the annual books issue, and then that turned out that week some big news happened. I forget what it was, and it got bumped, and it waited a year. And in that year, I did the one with the enormous turkey for Thanksgiving. So the first one I drew was the woman with the books, but the first one that got published was the enormous turkey.
The New Yorker cover is an absolute hall of fame to draw, we could say.
No, it's an amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing thing that they've had this magazine running for 100 years, and they've never had anything on the cover except an illustration or a cartoon, and they have no text apart from the masthead. So it's this amazing showcase of your work, and I feel very lucky when I manage to get a cover. What's good is Françoise Mouly, who's the art director of the covers, has been involved with the comics world since the 80s. She worked with her husband, Art Spiegelman, and created suddenly my mind's gone blank. What was it called? Their thing? Raw. They created Raw, which kind of brought loads of amazing cartoonists to life, to the world. And then for I don't know how many years, but I suppose at least 10, her sole job at the New Yorker is to do the covers. And every week she's, commissioning somebody else. And I can't remember why, but I think she just sent me an email saying she'd seen some of my comics, and if I ever had an idea for a cover, to just send them an idea. And that's how it works, is you send them a sketch, and if Françoise likes it, she takes it to, she might ask you to tidy it up a bit or edit it, and then she takes it to David Remnick, the editor, and if he likes it, then you get the go-ahead to make the finished thing.
This one here is one where everyone is hungry.
Yes.
The kid is thinking about a lot of ice cream, for example, on the top. Now the kid is... I like how there's the rounds. The cat under the Yorker bit is thinking about the pigeon. Pigeon is thinking about the cake that the guy is eating. The cake is...
Yes.
thirsty. He has food, but he has no drink. So there's those rounds. The baby is thinking about the boob of the mom. The mom is thinking about alcohol, which she can't drink because she's breastfeeding.
Yes.
So cool.
No, I thought they might ask me to get rid of the boob on the front of the New Yorker, but Françoise is French originally, so she's probably a bit more cool about these things. And I did a version with a baby bottle, but I think it's almost better to. I sent both and said I'd much prefer the boob, but if you want the baby bottle, I think actually in illustration, seeming like you're willing to compromise sometimes makes it easier to get what you want. So the thing with New Yorker covers is you can't really have much text. You could have a line or two. I don't think any of mine ever have. So telling a story or making a joke with just an image is difficult. So there are some amazing painters who will just paint a picture of a New York scene, and the painting is so good that it works as a cover. But for me, it has to be a joke or a story or a concept. And this idea of everyone either thinking about or saying the food they want kind of came to me. You know, I don't live in New York, I live in London, but I can kind of transplant things. So I often, as I was saying, go for long walks to think about my work. And sometimes it gets close to lunchtime, and I start feeling so hungry that I almost can't make a decision about what I want to eat for lunch, and it becomes a spiral. And my trick is to buy a banana and eat a banana, and then with the banana energy, I can then decide what to do for lunch. So it stops me making bad lunch decisions. But I was in London thinking about it, and I thought, I could do what everybody's thinking about. And the great thing about Google Maps is you can take a walk around New York City from London. So I had the idea, but I wanted the little details to be correct. So I could literally walk around the parks of New York until I found the details. And in the end, it's not that different from a park in London, but there's some subtle things that are correct from a park. And also, once you have an idea, then the nice thing about having all that space on the cover is I can go to town on it. In one of my weekly strips, I couldn't have nearly this much going on, but on the New Yorker, there's space for a few stories, like the kid who's dropped his ice cream and the line of ants coming to eat it. So that's fun.
It is. There's this one two things for me that why I chose this. It's very emotional in a way, but also it's a comic on the New Yorker page.
Yes. No, I've managed to sneak a few comics onto there, which I've enjoyed doing, and it is that trick that it still has to work as a magazine cover to draw your attention and have some sort of visual unity as one image, but it also has to, when it's a comic, read as a comic. And I've got a good friend, Peter, and we often go and he lives in the countryside, and we go and visit, and he would at night he had a telescope and would show my kids the stars through the telescope. So it was kind of inspired by him. And I realized it started with more with the sketches on the other side, where I just was thinking, I could do a load of scenes involving stars. And then I realized, I can tell a little story. And I think the blueness kind of unites it enough into an image. And by having a grey boundary to the comics, it stops it was white originally, and everything, the light needs to be the brightest thing. And it's slightly difficult to see, but the kid is in bed in the last one. You can see they're kind of have various space themed things in their bedroom.
Looking at the stars, reminiscing about what it has seen.
Yes.
At least in my mind. And the New Yorker also published sketches with it in the interview.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, no, they've started. I don't think they did that when I first worked for them, but yeah, the online presence is a little interview, and if you have sketches, they like to show those. And I love sharing little sketches like this. It's nice. I think it's nice, especially for other younger creative people, but just for anyone to see, behind the curtain.
And this one is recent, kind of about the power of art, right? in a way?
Yes. Yeah. I think well, we were talking about this, weren't we? About you getting wet at a comic festival and having a hole in your shoe. And I had the same thing, as I always wear these same shoes and they get holes in them sometimes. And then it's the most depressing thing to have wet feet. And it's just times, especially in a city like London, I think when it's really grey and rainy, it's you think, oh, this is the worst. This is the worst it can be. And when you're on a walking along a street and you see inside to someone who's in that sort of yellow glow of being inside and you're outside cold and wet, that was where it came from. And I had then thought, oh well, I want the main thing for me to work on is for the inside to feel really warm and the outside to feel really miserable. And I think it was a shop I was going to do at first, and then I realized that an art gallery is great, and I love sitting down on those funny sort of chunky benches they have in art galleries and looking at things. So yeah, it's someone sort of basking in the warm glow of art. And when I realised, she can have one of those really yellow sou'wester type jackets, then it all. And the sad dog, I really enjoyed working on the dog outside to make sure he looked as sad as possible.
He doesn't like the rain.
No.
What is your wish for your art? What conversation would you like to start?
Well, with the cartoons in The Guardian and with New Scientist, my basic aim, the sort of level I'm aiming for all the time, is just to give people a moment of entertainment in their day. Some of them are just a little fun, tasty treat which you can enjoy, and there's nothing more to them than that. Some of them are just the enjoyment of a, humor is like a little puzzle which then you solve and it gives you a happy moment in your brain. So quite a lot of them are just that. Sometimes I have something more I want to say about, literature or mean people or whatever. There might be a bit more than that, but the normal aim is just a bit of pleasure. And the New Yorker covers, I think it's similar. I want them to be light and funny and enjoyable, but with a bit of intelligence to them. So it's not just clowning. There's a bit of fun for your brain as well. So that's true. And the graphic novels, I don't know. I just start writing the stories, and I almost tried not to think too much about what they meant while I was making them, because then I think I might try too hard to say something. And I quite like the fact that both times I've done it, it's sort of ended up being about me in a funny way, which I didn't really think about that much. I was more just working on the incredibly difficult mechanics of telling a good story. So I think I'm maybe quite introspective. I quite like the craft of making the comics, and I just try and keep making them and hope people like them.
Good worker. At the end of our comic bar, we always have the section of micro questions.
Okay.
Are you ready? Okay, yes or no is enough.
Okay.
What's better, reading comics or making comics?
I really like both. I think making. Yeah, I think making.
Sci-fi or comic?
These are really difficult questions. This is cruel at the end. Sci-fi or comic? So sort of humor, or all sci-fi or all comics?
Medium,
oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. I take comics.
Okay. Pencil or ink?
Ink.
London or Edinburgh?
London.
Better basis for creativity, chaos or structure?
Oh, I like structure.
Your method, intuition or conception?
I think mainly conception.
What's first, idea or drawing?
I think drawing. Yeah, I think the idea often comes out of the drawing.
Comic strip or graphic novel?
Comic strip.
How much of your art is talent and how much is practice?
I think it's 95% practice.
Pop or punk?
Pop or punk? I mean, I don't think my work is very punk, but I like the do-it-yourself aspect, so I'll say punk.
Genius or madness?
Oh, I don't want madness. No, I'll have genius, please.
Truth or beauty?
Oh. We'll have truth.
Do you draw by day or by night?
Or by day.
What's hardest to draw?
Hands.
But you just have circles.
Yeah, I can't draw hands.
What's harder to draw, dogs or cats?
Dogs. Dogs' necks are incredibly difficult, I find.
What's harder, drawing or writing?
Or writing.
I agree. Favorite physics theory?
I quite like the many worlds interpretation that there's a version of everything happening somewhere.
Parallel universe?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it doesn't sound very likely, but I like the idea.
Favorite library?
Favorite library. I have a lovely little library 5 minutes walk from my house, which is very architecturally very cute and very sweet. So I'll take that. The Manor Gardens Library of Islington.
It even sounds cute.
Yeah, it's cute. It's cute.
Librarians or physicists?
Oh no, that's cruel because there's probably some of both in here. I'll have to take librarians. Sorry, physicists.
What's next?
What is next? I'm trying to do a new graphic novel. I don't know how it'll work. It's kind of when I wrote my kids. Is this a micro question? Yeah, I'll be quick.
But you
when I wrote
can
my
elaborate.
kids' book, I
It's
read.
the last one. Sorry.
When I wrote my kids' book, I read every single Grimm's fairy tale, and I loved them. And my kids' book is kind of inspired by that. But I think I can do something for grown-ups, inspired not directly, but in a fairy tale world. And traveling around Germany on trains and looking into all those forests has been quite inspiring. So that's quite helpful. I'm hoping to do something for adults, but it's at a very early stage.
Thank you, Tom Gauld.
Thank you. Thanks. Those were great questions.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Do you have any questions? We have a microphone that maybe someone could pass around.